I drove up to my dying mom's land and saw bright orange ribbons tied around every single tree my dad ever planted. The HOA president across the road just smiled at me like she'd already won. But did she really think I'd let her get away with it? The ribbons hit me before anything else did. 41 trees, every single one of them wrapped in bright orange plastic that snapped in the wind like tiny flags at a parade. I had just driven 2 hours from the cancer center with my mom Rosa in the passenger seat, her oxygen tank tucked between her feet, and I was trying to keep my voice light and my hands steady on the wheel. She didn't see the ribbons. She had her eyes closed, her cheek against the window, and I was glad. I parked behind the old shed and told her I needed a minute to grab the mail. I walked up to the closest oak. There was a little plastic card stapled into the bark. Stapled into a living tree my dad planted the year I was born. The card said the property was scheduled for vegetation clearing, to make room for a new access road, and the work would start in 7 days. My name is Caleb. I'm 34 years old. My mom had 4 months left to live, and somebody had decided this was the week to murder her trees. I pulled the card off and a long strip of bark came with it. Across the road, a screen door slammed. I didn't even have to look up. I knew who it was before I heard the little dog yapping in her arms. Denise. The HOA president of Whispering Pines, the new fancy subdivision that had sprouted up behind Mom's land 6 years ago. She was wearing a pink visor and tan capris and the kind of bright white sneakers people only wear when they don't actually walk anywhere. She crossed the road like she owned it. Caleb! I was hoping you'd be by today. How is your sweet mother? What is this? I held up the card. She tilted her head and gave me the smile. You know the smile. The one that's not really a smile, just teeth. Oh, the notice. Didn't you get our letter? The board approved the access road last Tuesday. 5-1. We need to cut a path through the front section so the construction trucks can reach the new model homes in the back. It really is for the best. This is my mother's land. She isn't part of your HOA. She has never been part of your HOA. Denise patted her dog. Sweetie, I think you'll want to take another look at your paperwork. Things have shifted since your father passed. My father had been dead for 11 years. He was a land surveyor for 36 years in this county, and he kept his paperwork the way a banker keeps his money. Nothing about Mom's land had shifted. I knew that the way I knew my own name. I told Denise to stay off the property, and I walked back to the truck. Mom was awake now. She was looking out the window at the orange ribbons, and her face was very still. Caleb. What are those? Nothing, Mama. Decorations. I'll take them down tonight. She looked at me for a long second, the way she used to look at me when I was 8 and lying about a broken window. Then she just nodded, because she was too tired to fight, and that broke something in me right there in the driveway. I helped her into the house. I made her tea she barely drank. I tucked her in for her afternoon nap. And then I went into my dad's old office and pulled every deed box off the shelf with shaking hands. The deed was clean. No easement. No HOA. No nothing. The land had been in our family since 1962, when my grandfather bought it for $2,000 and a used pickup truck. My dad had filed an updated boundary survey in 1987, the year my sister Mariella was born, and there was nothing on the map about an access road or a path or any easement of any kind. So why was Denise so sure? I sat at the kitchen table all afternoon. I made a list. I called the county recorder's office. I called the local zoning office. I got told to leave a voicemail by both. I drove down to the print shop in town and made 15 copies of the deed and the 1987 survey, and I started to feel a little better, because paper is paper and the truth is the truth. The phone rang at 8:47 that night. A man's voice. Calm, older lawyer, quiet. He said he was calling on behalf of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, and he wanted to give me what he called a courtesy heads up. Crews would be arriving at sunrise to begin the clearing work. He hoped this would not be a problem. I asked him sunrise of what day. He said, tomorrow morning, sir. 6 a.m. sharp. I told him my mother was dying in the back bedroom and that he was about to cut down the tree my father planted the day my sister was born, a sister who had died at 22, and that no court in this country had given him the right to step 1 foot on this land. There was a long pause. He said, Sir, I'm just a messenger. He hung up. I stood in the kitchen with the phone in my hand and I could hear Mom coughing in the back room, the deep rattling cough that the doctors said meant the medicine wasn't working anymore. I looked out the kitchen window at the dark yard, at the shape of the magnolia tree my dad planted for Mariella, the one that bloomed every April and made Mom cry every April, and I knew I had less than 10 hours to figure out how to save it. I picked up the phone and started dialing my father's old Rolodex. The first 3 calls went nowhere. The 4th one answered on the 2nd ring. Before this story takes a turn nobody saw coming, do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button right now, because what Denise tries next at sunrise is the kind of move you have to see with your own eyes to believe. The 4th call was a man named Hollis Webb, and his voice on the other end of the line sounded exactly the same as it had at my father's funeral 11 years ago. Rough, slow, and steady, like a man who had spent his whole life outside. Caleb. It's been a long time, son. Your daddy talked about you every single day. I told him everything in about 4 minutes. The trees. The orange ribbons. Denise. The lawyer's phone call. The sunrise deadline. I heard him pour something into a coffee mug while I talked. When I was done, he was quiet for a long beat. Then he said, "Son, don't go to bed. I'll be at your kitchen table in 40 minutes. Hollis was 78 years old. He had been my dad's hunting partner for 22 years, and before he retired, he had been the head of the county's land use and zoning office for almost 3 decades. If there was a man alive who knew every property line in this county, it was him. He pulled up at 9:46 that night in a beat-up green truck that I recognized from when I was a kid. He came in carrying a leather satchel and a thermos of coffee, and he hugged me without saying a word. We spread the deed out on the kitchen table. He put on his reading glasses. He went through the 1987 survey line by line, and his fingers stopped on the front section of the property, the part with the trees. "Your daddy filed this in '87. That's the binding survey of record. Nobody can build, cut, or cross this front parcel without your mama's signed permission. Period. Then how did the HOA approve a road through it?" Hollis took a long sip from his thermos. "That's what I want to know. Hand me your laptop." He pulled up the county property records site. He typed in Mom's parcel number. The screen loaded, and his face changed. Just a little. Just enough that I noticed. Well, look at that. There was a document attached to Mom's parcel that I had never seen before. It was filed 2 months ago. It was an easement grant, with what looked like Mom's signature on it, giving Whispering Pines a 30-foot wide access right through the front of the property. The signature was witnessed by a notary I had never heard of. The date on the document was July 14th. I knew exactly where Mom was on July 14th. She was in the cancer ward, on a morphine drip, recovering from her 2nd surgery. She couldn't hold a pen that day. She couldn't hold a cup of water that day. Hollis looked at me over his glasses. "Son, this is forgery." I felt something cold move down the back of my neck. I felt something else too. Something very still and very quiet, the way a lake gets quiet right before a storm. "What do we do?" Hollis leaned back in his chair. "First thing. You don't tell Denise we know. Not yet. You let her show up at sunrise. You let her watch the crews try to start. We use that. Second thing. I'm calling Margaret Chin at the county recorder's office at 6 a.m., and I'm telling her to flag this document for fraud review. Third thing. Your daddy had a friend at the regional newspaper, a reporter named Tomas Reyes. I'm calling him too. By noon tomorrow, this little HOA scheme is going to have a spotlight on it the size of a stadium." I looked at the clock on the stove. It was 11:14 p.m. I had until 6 a.m. "What about the trees?" Hollis's face got soft. "Son, I'm gonna be straight with you. The crews show up at 6. Even if Margaret flags the document, it'll take her till 9 or 10 to get a stop order issued. Some of those trees are coming down. I'm sorry." I sat with that for a minute. I thought about the magnolia. I thought about my dad on his hands and knees in the spring of 1992, planting that little stick of a tree, telling 4-year-old me that one day my sister would climb it. I thought about Mariella, who never did get to climb it, because the leukemia took her at 22 before she ever got the chance. I told Hollis I needed 5 minutes. I went out to the front yard with a flashlight and a saw. I walked up to the magnolia and I said I was sorry. And then I cut 3 of the lowest branches, the ones with the most buds on them, and I carried them inside and put them in a bucket of water in the laundry room. If they were going to take the tree, they weren't getting all of it. I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. I didn't sleep. I sat by Mom's bed and watched her breathe. At 5:47 a.m., I heard the trucks. I want you to picture this. The road in front of Mom's house is a quiet country road. You almost never hear a car go by. And here came 6 vehicles in a slow line, headlights cutting through the blue dark, diesel engines rumbling, a wood chipper bouncing along on a trailer behind the last truck. They lined up at the gate like an army. A man in a yellow hard hat got out and walked straight up to the chain on Mom's fence with a pair of bolt cutters. I stepped out onto the porch in my jeans and my dad's old work boots. "Sir? You stop right there." He looked up. He had a clipboard. He had the bored face of a man who got paid by the hour. "Sir, I have a work order. Signed and stamped. That work order is based on a forged document. The county is reviewing it as we speak." He shrugged. "I don't know anything about that, sir. I just cut what I'm told to cut." The bolt cutters closed on the chain. That's when Denise's white SUV pulled up behind the trucks. She got out wearing full makeup at 6 in the morning, holding a travel mug that said "Boss Lady" on the side. She was smiling. She had no idea what was already in motion. Denise crossed the gravel like she was walking into her own kitchen. The little dog wasn't with her this time. She had traded the dog for a clipboard and a man in a navy blue suit who could only be the lawyer from the phone call. He was tall, gray, and tired-looking. He was carrying a manila folder. "Caleb, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stayed on the porch. I had my phone in my hand. The voice memo app was already recording. Hollis had told me to record everything, and I had been recording since 5:30 a.m. "Denise, the document you filed at the county is forged. My mother was in the hospital on July 14th, on morphine, after surgery. She did not sign anything that day. She physically could not have." The lawyer's face moved. Just a tiny twitch around his eyes. He looked at Denise. Denise did not look at him. "Caleb, the document was properly witnessed and notarized. We have every right to be here." "Witnessed by who? Notarized by who? Tell me their names right now." Denise opened her mouth and closed it. The lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Marquez, I think we should all take a breath. If there's a question about the paperwork, that can be sorted out through the proper channels. In the meantime, the work order is valid on its face, and the crew is going to proceed." "No, they are not." "Sir. No, they are not." I held up my phone. "I have Hollis Webb on speakerphone. You may know him. He used to run the zoning office. He's currently on a 3-way call with Margaret Chin at the county recorder and Tomas Reyes at the regional paper. The fraud flag goes on Mom's parcel in 11 minutes. After that, anyone who continues to work on this site is committing trespass and destruction of property on a flagged parcel. That includes the crew. That includes the foreman. That includes you, Denise, personally, because your name is on the work order." The foreman with the bolt cutters had stopped moving. He was listening now. He looked back at his crew. 2 of the younger guys had already taken a step back from the fence. Denise's face went pink. Then red. Then a strange splotchy color I had never seen on a human being before. "You can't bluff me, Caleb. I have the board behind me. I have the developer behind me. I have..." "Denise. I am not bluffing. I am recording. And in about 9 minutes, a reporter is going to call your house phone for a statement. You should think about what you want that statement to be." The lawyer touched her elbow. "Denise." A word. They walked back toward her SUV. They had a quiet conversation that I could not hear. The lawyer was doing most of the talking. Denise was shaking her head a lot. At one point, she pointed at me, and the lawyer shook his head and said something short and sharp. While they argued, the foreman walked up to my porch. He took off his hard hat. He was maybe 50, with a sunburned neck and kind eyes. "Sir. My name's Earl. I run this crew. I don't want any part of a fraud case. If what you're saying is true, we are gone. Just say the word. Earl. I need you to understand. They tried to do this at sunrise on purpose. They did it because they thought I wouldn't have time to fight back. They picked this week because my mother is dying in the back room and they figured I'd be too tired to notice." Earl looked at the house. He looked at the orange ribbons fluttering on the trees. He looked at the magnolia. He put his hat back on. He turned around and walked to his truck. He picked up his radio. All units. Stand down. We are leaving the site. Repeat. We are leaving the site. Load up. I cannot tell you what it felt like to watch those 6 trucks turn around in my mother's driveway and drive away. The wood chipper bounced back down the gravel road and out of sight. The diesel rumble faded. The orange ribbons kept fluttering. Every single tree was still standing. Denise watched the trucks leave with her mouth open. The lawyer was already walking back to his own car, the manila folder under his arm, shaking his head. She marched up to my porch. You think you've won something, Caleb? You think this is over? I think you should go home. I am the president of this association. I will have your mother's house in foreclosure by the end of the year. I will make her last months a living. I stepped down off the porch. I did not raise my voice. I just stepped down so we were eye to eye. Denise. My phone has been recording since 5:30 this morning. Every word you just said is on it. The reporter I mentioned is going to be very interested in that recording. Now, get off my mother's land. She left. I sat on the porch step and shook for about 10 minutes. By 9:14 a.m., the county had flagged the easement document for fraud review. By 11:30, Margaret Chin had matched a notary stamp on the forged easement to a notary who had been suspended for misconduct in another county 2 years ago. By 2 p.m., Tomas Reyes had called me back, and I had emailed him the recording, the deed, the 1987 survey, and a copy of Mom's hospital records from July 14th showing she was in post-op recovery on a morphine drip. The story ran on the front page of the regional paper that Sunday. The headline was 8 words long. HOA tried to forge dying woman's signature. The photo above the headline was the magnolia tree. But here is the part nobody tells you about winning. Mom saw the paper. She read the headline. She looked up at me from her recliner with the paper shaking in her thin hands, and she did not look proud. She looked sad. Mijo. Come sit with me. I sat down on the floor by her chair. She put her hand on my hair the way she used to when I was small. You saved the trees. Yes, Mama. Where have you been the last 2 weeks? I started to cry. She just kept stroking my hair, slow and steady, and she didn't say it again. She didn't have to. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Hollis. I told him I was pulling back. No lawsuit. No criminal charges. Not yet. I told him I needed to be in the house, with Mom, for whatever time was left, and I could not be in the house if I was also at the courthouse. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Son, your daddy would understand. You take care of your mama. The paperwork will keep. I hung up. I made Mom oatmeal with brown sugar the way she liked it. I sat on the edge of her bed. I told her I was going to be home from now on. I told her the trees were safe and the news was already out and the rest could wait. She closed her eyes and smiled the smallest smile. She said, Read me Daddy's letters. My father had written my mother 3 letters a week the summer he worked a survey job up in Alaska, in 1979, when they were engaged. She had kept every single one in a shoebox on the top shelf of her closet. I had never read them. I had always thought they were private. That afternoon, I climbed up and got the box down and I read them to her, one by one, sitting in the chair beside her bed. They were funny. They were embarrassing. My dad, who I had only ever known as a quiet man who measured land for a living, wrote my mother love poems about the way she laughed. He drew little cartoons in the margins. He told her about the moose he saw outside his cabin, and he told her he was counting the days until he could marry her, and he signed every single letter. Yours, until the mountains move. Mom cried a little. She laughed a little more. She fell asleep with her hand in mine and the letters spread across the quilt. While she slept, I went outside. I walked the front of the property where the trucks would have come through. I touched every tree. I counted them. 41. Every single one of them still standing. The orange ribbons were starting to fade in the sun, and I left them where they were, because I wanted to remember. I walked over to the magnolia. I sat down at the base of it. I told my dad I was sorry I had not visited him at the cemetery in 2 years. I told him Mom was tired. I told him Mariella's tree was safe. I told him I was trying to do this right. A car door slammed across the road. I looked up. Denise was standing in her driveway, watching me. She had not been outside in 2 days, not since the article ran. I had heard from a neighbor that her phone had been ringing nonstop and that the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. She looked smaller than I remembered. She looked like a regular tired woman in her 50s, not a villain. She raised her hand. Just a little. Like a half-wave. Like she wanted to say something and did not know how. I did not wave back. I did not have it in me. I just looked at her until she went back inside. That evening, the doorbell rang. It was a young woman holding a casserole dish. She introduced herself as Priya. She had moved into the house next to Denise's 6 months ago. She said she had read the article. She said she was a paralegal, and she was on the HOA board, and she was the one vote out of 5 who had voted no on the access road. She said she was sorry. She said she had not known about the forged easement, and the second she found out, she had filed paperwork to remove Denise from the board. She said the vote was happening Thursday. I asked her why she was telling me this. She said, "Because I read about your sister in the article. I lost my brother to leukemia when I was 19. I just wanted you to know somebody on this side of the road sees what they did to your family." I let her in. I introduced her to Mom. Mom held her hand for a long time. Priya stayed for tea. She told us about her brother Arjun. Mom told her about Mariella. They cried together a little, and they laughed a little, and when Priya left, Mom looked at me and said, "Mijo, some neighbors are good. Don't forget that part." The HOA board voted Denise out on Thursday by a margin of 4-1. The new board, with Priya as president, sent me a formal apology letter on the following Monday. They withdrew the easement claim. They paid for an independent surveyor to come out and remark the property line. The surveyor found something interesting. Denise's back patio had been built 11 feet inside Mom's property. So had the corner of the community pool's pump house. So had a chunk of the walking path that Whispering Pines residents used every morning. Mom was on the porch in her wheelchair when the surveyor told me this. She started to laugh. A real laugh. The first one I had heard from her in months. 11 feet, Caleb. 11 feet of our land they have been walking on for 15 years. Your father is laughing in heaven right now. I asked her what she wanted to do about it. Tear out the patio? Move the pump house? Charge them rent for 15 years of trespass? She thought about it for a long time. She watched the wind move through the leaves of the magnolia. She said, "Let them keep it. All of it. The patio. The path. The pump house. Tell Priya it is a gift from the Marquez family. Tell her our only condition is that they take care of the trees in the front section. Forever. Put it in the bylaws." I started to argue. She held up her hand. "Mijo, I am dying. I am not going to spend my last weeks fighting over 11 feet of dirt. I am going to give it away on purpose. Because that is the opposite of what Denise tried to do. And the opposite is the only answer." Priya cried when I told her. The new board passed a bylaw amendment in a single meeting. The trees in the front section of Mom's land were now protected by the HOA itself. The same HOA that 3 weeks earlier had tried to chop them down. Mom slept well that night. She got worse on Saturday. The hospice nurse came on Sunday morning. Her name was Beverly, and she was a quiet woman in her 60s with gray braids and warm hands. She showed me how to give Mom the small doses of medicine that would keep her comfortable. She showed me how to wet a sponge for her lips when she could no longer drink. She told me, very gently, that we were probably looking at days now, not weeks. I want to tell you about those days, because they were the most important days of my life, and I have never talked about them out loud. Priya came over every afternoon with food. She did not stay long. She just left a casserole and sat with Mom for 10 minutes and held her hand. Hollis came twice. He sat on the porch with me and did not say much. He brought a bottle of my dad's favorite bourbon, and we poured a small glass and left it on the porch railing in the spot where my dad used to sit, and we drank our own glasses in silence. Earl, the foreman who had pulled his crew off the job, sent a card. A card. From a man I had met for 9 minutes. It said, "Praying for your family. Earl." The neighbors started leaving things at the gate. Flowers. A pie. A small wooden cross from the woman 3 houses down. People I had never met. People who had read the article. People who knew what it was to lose a mother. On Tuesday, Mom asked me to wheel her out to the magnolia. It was October. The tree was not blooming, but she wanted to be there. I wheeled her out across the grass, very slow, very careful. I parked her chair right at the base of the trunk. She put her hand on the bark. She said, "Your father planted this for Mariella." Did you know what he said when he planted it? No, Mama. He said this tree will outlive all of us. And every spring, when it blooms, it will be Mariella saying hello. I knelt down next to the wheelchair. I put my head on the arm of the chair. She stroked my hair the way she had since I was 3 years old. We stayed there a long time. The wind moved the leaves above us. A crow landed on the fence. The light turned gold the way it does in October. She said, "Caleb, I want to tell you something, and I want you to listen." "Yes, Mama." "You did not save these trees. The land saved itself. You were just the one who answered the phone." I started to cry. I could not stop. She said, "When I am gone, do not be angry. Do not sue Denise. Do not destroy her life. The forged paper is enough. The newspaper is enough. The vote is enough. Let the rest go. Promise me." I promised her. She said, "Plant something new in the spring. For me. Next to Mariella's tree." I promised her that too. She passed away on Thursday morning, October 9th, at 7:14 a.m. The light was coming through her bedroom window at the exact angle she always loved, the gold-orange angle that hits the room for about 12 minutes a day in autumn. Beverly was there. I was there. I was holding her hand. Her last word was my father's name. She said it like a question. Like she was asking if he was waiting. I sat with her for about an hour before I called anyone. I want to tell you what I did first, after I called the funeral home. I went outside. I walked to the magnolia. I cut one of the highest branches I could reach with a long pruner. I brought it inside. I put it in a vase on the kitchen table. The branch had 3 small green buds on it that would not bloom until spring. The funeral was small. Priya came. Hollis came. Earl came. Beverly came. The woman with the wooden cross came. Tomas Reyes, the reporter, came, and he did not bring a notebook. He just stood at the back and put a hand on my shoulder when I walked past. Denise did not come. I had not expected her to. But 3 days after the funeral, I found a letter in the mailbox. It was handwritten on plain paper. No return address. It said, "Caleb, I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not forgive myself. I was wrong about the road, the easement, all of it. I told myself I was helping the community. I was helping no one. I am moving to Arizona to be near my daughter. I will not be back. I am sorry about your mother. I am sorry about the magnolia. I am sorry. Denise." I read it twice. I folded it up. I put it in the box with my dad's letters from Alaska. I do not know exactly why I kept it. Maybe because Mom would have wanted me to. Maybe because the opposite of what Denise tried to do is the only answer, and the opposite of throwing the letter away was keeping it. The house felt very quiet that week. I slept in my old bedroom. I drank coffee on the porch in the mornings. I watched the trees. I did not cry as much as I thought I would, because Mom had given me the kind of goodbye most people never get, and the gift of that was bigger than the grief. But I had a promise to keep. And spring was a long way off. The first frost came in early November. I had not left the property in 3 weeks. I would wake up, make coffee, walk the front section, count the trees, sit with the magnolia for a while, eat something I did not taste, and go to bed at 8. Hollis called twice a week. Priya brought groceries every Sunday. I was a little bit not okay. But I was okay enough to wake up the next day, and the day after that. In late November, I found a small notebook in Mom's nightstand. The cover said, "For Caleb." Inside, in her careful script, she had written down the names of every plant she wanted me to put in the front section. Magnolia. Dogwood. Redbud. Serviceberry. Eastern oak. American holly. 43 plants in all, with notes like, "This one will bring the Cardinals back," and "Your father loved this one." The last entry was not a plant. It said, "Caleb, the land is yours now. Be its friend." Mom. I called a native plant nursery the next morning. The owner was named Ines. I told her the whole story. When I asked the cost, she gave me a number less than half of what I expected. "The rest is on the house," she said. "My mother died of cancer when I was 27. I know what this is." We planted on March 14th. Priya came. Hollis came. Earl came with 3 of his sons and a borrowed backhoe. Tomas came with a notebook for the follow-up story. 11 people from Whispering Pines came, including 2 of the men who had voted with Denise and spent the winter trying to make it right. They brought shovels. They brought their kids. I planted the new magnolia myself, in the exact spot where the old one stood. I dug the hole by hand. I put a small flat stone at the base with my sister's name on one side and my father's on the other and my mother's on the bottom edge, where the dirt covers it, because she said once she wanted her name on the wind. The new magnolia bloomed the following April. I was drinking coffee on the porch when I looked up and the tree had opened overnight into a cloud of white. I walked out in bare feet and sat at the base of the trunk. I said, "Hi, Mama. Hi, Daddy. Hi, Mariella." The wind moved the petals. That was 4 years ago. People ask me why I did not sue. Why I did not destroy Denise. Here is what I tell them. My mother told me the land would save itself, and that I was just the one who answered the phone. She made me promise to plant something new. I kept the promise. The trees came back. The neighbors came back. The cardinals came back. I am never alone on this porch.